Hey everybody, I'm Greg Sowell, and this is Why Am I, a podcast where I talk to interesting people and try and trace a path to where they find themselves today. So my guest this go around is Jeff Kellum. He's a content manager and actually the person who discovered me for LinkedIn Learning, Lynda.com, all that stuff. He's a cyclist and a sometimes world traveler, believe it or not. What's interesting to me is he finds all these random people and alters the course of their lives, but he wants to do it quietly behind the scenes without getting the credit. Well, I see you, Jeff, and I appreciate you. So I hope you enjoy this chat with Jeff. Jeff, thanks for joining me on the Why Am I podcast today.
Thanks for having me. Looking forward to it.
Oh, the man says, the nervous man says, looking forward to it. Excellent. I am glad. I've been chuffed to do this all week. So I haven't recorded in a minute, and it kind of builds up, and I got to get it out. But I digress. So you and I are we're sitting. I don't know. How about we're at a Mexican restaurant, and we're waiting on our order, and we're both sharing a margarita over at Los Taquitos. Let's do that, and we start chatting because you have an interesting look. I like your the cut of your jib there. And so we're having a little conversation. We talk about me for a second, but I'm boring. So it's your turn to reciprocate, Jeff. So who are you?
Who am I? Jeff Kellum. Professionally, I am a content manager with LinkedIn Learning, which is, I know, where you and I have crossed paths. Currently reside in Phoenix, Arizona. I've been here 20 some years. Outside of work, I like outdoorsy stuff, which you kind of have to if you live in Phoenix, Arizona. There's lots of outdoor activity. My activity of choice is usually biking or hiking, or hanging out in the pool. I guess that's me in a nutshell.
Well, you say you have to like outdoor activities. Isn't it bananas hot where you live?
Yes. It's hot in summertime, in the winter and fall, and what's the others? We don't have seasons in Arizona, so you have to remind me. Spring. It's awesome. And I went out for a walk this morning. It was 65, which for us is like, that's get a jacket and put your gloves on weather. For us, that's pretty chilly. It was so nice. But there's so much to do here. There's, Phoenix itself, it's surrounded by mountains and desert. But Arizona in general, which is a relatively small state, you can drive 2 hours and you're up in the pines, and 2.5 hours is the Grand Canyon. So there's just a lot for people who like outdoor activities to do. And there's a lot of land.
Well, if you've been there 20 years, what do you love so much about Phoenix? Why are you still there?
It's funny. When I first moved here, I hated Phoenix. I grew up in Tucson, Arizona, and there's this like internal rivalry between Tucsonans and Phoenicians, mostly because of the college. Like, I went to the University of Arizona. Tucson's a college town, so if you lived in Tucson, you had to be a U of A fan. And then Arizona State's here in Phoenix, and so there's a big rivalry. And so that was part of the reason. And then the reason I moved to Phoenix was for a job, well, for a girl, and a job. And I was like, I hate it here. There was no culture. It was just very like whitewashed. It didn't seem real. Like there wasn't. Growing up in Tucson, which was kind of, gritty and just had a heartbeat. Phoenix to me just seemed kind of fake. So if you asked me why I liked Phoenix 20 years ago, I'd say I don't. I hate it. But been here 20 years, and it's grown on me, but it's also changed as a city. Like the downtown area is actually like a real downtown. Like you can go there on a Tuesday afternoon and there's people milling about. You can go to Phoenix on a Saturday night 20 years ago and be a ghost town. So And they really stepped up their game. So it was kind of a backhanded compliment to Phoenix, but there's a lot of variety here.
Mm. When you go back to Tucson, does it still feel that way to you? Does it still feel gritty and raw, and does it feel alive to you?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, and I miss it. I mean, I would move back in a heartbeat. It probably hasn't changed much since I've left, unlike Phoenix. I mean, it's the same town it was when I was, going to school there. Yeah, it's raw. Yeah, there's just something about it. Even like the roads, like you're riddled with potholes. They don't care. Yeah, it's like they're not trying to put out any kind of, airs. It's like, this is us, like it or leave it.
What is it about that you think that calls to you? Do you think that's kind of your outlook on life? This is me, take it or leave it?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I mean, I don't, I think I'm pretty genuine. Like, what you see is what you get. And, yeah, which, is probably sometimes can be a detriment. Like if I'm going out, I'm wearing something that feels comfortable. I'm not going to get dressed up. I rarely get dressed up. If it was an event where it required you to, but yeah, I would say that, yeah, what you see is what you get. I don't fake it.
I've had this ongoing conversation with my wife where we kind of touch on it, then we move away, and then a little bit, a couple months will pass, then we'll kind of touch it. And my whole thinking is, you wear clothes. I talked to somebody else that said you wear clothes, your style attracts your tribe. It's supposed to tell people, hey, this is kind of me and who I am, so you can find your other people. But something else I've noticed is when I dress a certain way, I'll feel more confident. I don't know. I'm not saying it like totally changes my persona, but I'll feel more confident. And I had this conversation with my wife, and she says she does that, but she does it purely for her, not for anybody else. And so my thinking is, well, if you were blind, would you wear those clothes? Or would you just wear the most absolutely comfortable thing you possibly could? Because then, there's no concept of somebody else looking at you or whatever. Do you ever think about that kind of stuff?
I make this statement all the time. I purchase, you can ask anybody, I purchase clothes based on two things: price. My wardrobe is probably 90% Old Navy because it's inexpensive, and fit. Like, how does it make me, how does it fit me? Does it feel comfortable? And then third, close to fit is like, do I feel comfortable in it? So it kind of goes hand in hand. So I'm not going to wear something that's gaudy, but, fits well. But if it's a cool shirt, but it's too tight or makes me look like I'm wearing a, balloon or something. But yeah, I think about that a lot. And we took a vacation to Mexico. It was our first vacation since, post-COVID. This is about a year ago. And so it was like our first like our first like international vacation, even though it's Mexico. And so I'm like, okay, I'm gonna update my wardrobe. And I feel embarrassed admitting this, but I bought some shirts on Amazon based on what they looked like. There are these loud, gaudy shirts, and I was like, but they were cheap. So going back to my criteria, number one is price. So and that's all I brought with me. So I didn't bring like my regular like clothes I'd feel comfortable in. And that whole trip, I just felt out of place because I'm like, this isn't what I normally wear. I feel weird. And so so I've had more of those clothes since. There was a point to that. I'm not sure what it was, but anyway.
I like it. So you went to Mexico. Do you think with that loud clothing, you felt more American than you ever have in your life? Because I think that's what people normally expect of Americans, is that we're like just loud and obnoxious or whatever. And if we can't personally be that, maybe our shirts can.
That wasn't my intent. Where we went was like, it was this like, this resort or it was like a beach town. So I thought, oh, this is what, people that live here. I don't know what I thought, but they seemed like beach attire. Yeah, I don't know what others thought of me when they saw me. Yeah, interesting. I didn't think about that, but maybe.
Do you are you comfortable in most places of life? Because you seem like such just a chill, down to earth, comfortable dude. It seems like you try and mold your environments around you to be like these comfortable spaces?
No, I no, I'm not. Uh, I'm a introvert by nature, and so like I'm comfortable around, 2 and 3 people at a time. When you put me in a group, like a crowd or a group setting, I'm the most awkward. I look for that corner in the room, and I love to observe. That's like my favorite thing to do is like people watch. So yeah, so not really. Yeah, my wife and I had this conversation like she's an extrovert and she'll talk to anybody and has no filter and even about me. And I'm like, I don't like sharing about myself. That's part of the reason I was nervous about this. I don't like talking about myself. Um, and I was like, and she'll say something about, oh, Jeff just did a bike race. And I'm like, don't tell them that. I don't want them to know that. I don't know this person. They're going to use that against me. So yeah, I'm extremely awkward in like those kind of settings.
Oh, good. You're in good company then. So
Same, you're the same.
I used to be. I'm less now. I think I bore akin to your wife now. Like I have I've heard of these things called boundaries that some people erect around themselves. I haven't discovered it for myself yet. I genuinely will talk to anybody about just about anything, and I have no problems. One thing that's interesting is I like talking to people, but I hate small talk. So conversations can get awkward quick, I think, because I just want to ask things that interest me, not necessarily about the weather. So
I could say, so like when you jump on a call with somebody for the first time and they ask what the weather's like and you're in Austin, is that right? Or
I'm
no,
close enough to it.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, like what's the weather? I think the last time we spoke, I might have asked you how the weather was. You're like, oh, come on, Jeff.
You're killing me. You're killing me. I usually, I'll change it to, if you could choose a superpower, it's either flight or invisibility. What's it going to be? So instead of small talk like that, I'll change it to something that kind of is sort of interesting. It actually, asking weird questions like that will tell me a lot about a person really quickly.
Yeah. Do you come up with these questions on your own, or do you have like a book of awkward questions, or like a mixture of both?
Sometimes yes, sometimes no. I think it's just my intrinsic awkwardness that seeps out, spills out of the seams constantly. I don't have to worry about it. So have you always been a quiet guy?
Yeah, it's funny. I was thinking about like thinking about when I was a kid. Like, yeah, I've always been kind of the shy. Yeah, I hate public speaking. I hate getting in front of people. I mean, I know I'm not the first one to say that. Like, get in front of a group of people is the most nerve-wracking thing I can think of. But I think about my wife has her nephew is he's autistic in extreme. Like he is super awkward and super shy. And one day out of the blue, he came home and told his mom that he auditioned for a play at school and got the part.
Whoa.
And she's like, yeah, like where'd this come from? Like, heads up that I'm going to be auditioning. No, like I'm interested in, being in a play. Like he just did it. And I think the reason he said he did is because he wanted to step out of his comfort zone. And I had a similar story. Like when I was in elementary school, I auditioned for a play. I don't know why, because it was a play. You talk about like superpowers. It was a play about the Superman and Batman and all these superheroes. And I played Batman. and I had to wear tights in the play. And going back to like clothes fitting well, like wearing tights, it all kind of makes sense now. But I don't know why I decided to audition for that play. Maybe subconsciously I was like, I know that I don't like doing this, so I have to step outside my comfort zone. So even though I don't like doing something, I'll do it if I'm forced to, or you know, I may put it on myself or somebody else does. But yeah.
Yeah. Hence doing this right now, correct?
Yeah, exactly. 100%.
I think it's that's interesting that you categorize yourself as an introvert and uncomfortable in public speaking and stuff like that. And your, I guess your current profession of content management, that's kind of exactly what you guys deal with, is making people talk to massive groups of folks.
Yeah, well, I'll flip the script here, and like I remember the first conversation you and I had, and I tried to convince you that you're a perfect fit for LinkedIn Learning. You told me, no, I'm not. I mean, we want to share some of that.
Sure. Yeah, I have no problems with it. It's good job of deflection and changing the subject. I like it. I like your style, Jeff. Yeah. So I was a troll making YouTube videos in my basement, and you found some of them and contacted me just out of the blue, and it was terrifying because I for most of my life I was very I don't know if introverted, just socially awkward, scared, like just uncomfortable in crowds or around large groups of people and stuff like that. And here you are asking me to produce stuff for the masses, and it's fine when you're hiding in your own little room and making stuff, but then you guys are trying to elevate me to a platform that is entirely uncomfortable. That story can't be uncommon for the people you guys approach, right?
No, it's not. And I think at one point you had asked, and I'll share this, like, that's the most proud, that the biggest accomplishment for me is when I can get somebody to come out of their shell and share themselves like you did. So, but yeah, it happens all the time. Because like, why me? Like, I think that was a question you asked me, and people ask me that all the time. Like, there's so many other people that I feel are better suited for this. They're not, introverts. They're not, aren't comfortable speaking in front of people. And it's rewarding to me when I can get somebody to do something that makes them a little bit uncomfortable and succeed at it. I mean, that's ultimately my goal, is that you feel like you've been successful at it.
So you're a sadist, I see. Exactly. It all comes out. No, yeah, for me, it was a huge point of growth and continues to be as such. And I think I told you that story about my first experience. You communicate with me, and the only way I could cope and rationalize with it, because I'm a say yes kind of person. Like, I try and always say yes whenever possible. To be perfectly honest, I think that's propelled me further in life than anything else I've done, is just saying yes to stuff. Like, or we need to do this. And it's like, okay, I'll do it. Just I guess maybe not saying no. Sometimes you just go and do it. But yeah, I had to keep telling myself, it's not real. It's not going to happen every step of the way. You first contact me. Yeah, sure. I'd be interested. And then secretly in my head, because it's not going to happen. Don't worry about it. It's not going to happen. And then make me a demo thing, and I'll do that. Okay. Yeah. Because it's not going to happen. They've accepted you. Let me introduce you to a producer. Oh, okay, cool. That's fine, because it's not going to. I just had to keep whispering that to myself up until the point where I step on an airplane and then depart, and there I am in Carp meeting my producer for the first time, and that was a very traumatic experience. I would say one of my top 5 traumatic experiences in life, but tremendous growth. In such a, well, no, maybe top 10. I don't know. I've got a lot of jacked up stuff. So maybe let's say top 20. But yeah, I don't know that I've ever experienced so much personal growth in such a compressed time frame before. And I may not have realized it all in that moment, but it definitely planted the seeds for a lot of different stuff. So talk about comfort zone. I mean, it's like somebody who's afraid of heights jumping out of an airplane. The next day, it's this what I think is the closest thing I can liken it to, but it's really good. It's definitely evolved me in big ways. Do you feel like that's become part of the joy of what you do, is finding and elevating those people? I mean, I know you kind of sort of spoke to it a minute ago.
Part of, I mean, I think that's the biggest joy I get from this job, is just that, is finding somebody that either has it, like I'll flip it a little bit, and yeah, there's plenty of people that they have this desire to like elevate themselves, but they've never been approached or they've never been given the opportunity, and just seeing how they embrace that. But I love being, on the side of the stage, watching them excel. And I will never take credit for anything. I mean, I'm fortunate that I was able to, get in touch with you and convince you to do this. But at the end of the day, it's all on you. And I just gave you that opportunity. But yeah, it's the biggest joy. Yeah, by far.
Yeah, you never take credit. That's interesting. Well, I mean, had I not taken the initial steps to make the videos, you would have never found me, I guess, right? So maybe I left the trail of breadcrumbs, but you definitely followed them, right? And I'm assuming you probably find a lot of people sort of that way. And so that's an interesting way of looking at it. You're more a catalyst, I guess. You see yourself as that. Like, you already take what's there and kind of elevate it, give it a platform.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. I mean, there has to be something. I mean, even though you said, oh, it's never going to happen, or, in the back of your mind, you're just like, you said it's one of the most nerve-wracking things you ever had to do. There's something, you did it. So obviously you had this desire, or there's something about the opportunity that made you want to see it to completion.
I told you I would do it. That's what it was.
Really?
It's like,
have you ever said,
yeah,
yeah, I was going to say, have you ever said yes to something that after you did it, you regretted it?
No, because I learned something every time.
Yeah.
Okay. I grow every single time I do something, even if it's boring or painful. Or to be perfectly honest, people don't ask me for stuff that often. So it's not that hard to say yes when things come along.
Do you have a bucket list, like things that you want to accomplish before you can't do them anymore?
No, yeah. I don't. Generally, if I think of something and I want to do it, I just do it. There are some things like more world travel, kind of like you do, but I've never had a quote unquote bucket list. I made a friend a little while back, this guy named Craig Coombs, and he has terminal cancer, and it's going to take him. And he did the bucket list thing, and he did some crazy shit. And he told me that, in a sense, he really didn't start living until he got a terminal diagnosis. And that's crazy to think about.
Yeah, it's crazy. And I would venture to say probably a lot of people that, do things that they wouldn't see themselves doing. Maybe not like someone says you're going to die in 6 months, but they see the end is near, and they're like, I got to get this stuff out of the way. I'm not going to live forever. But yeah, when you're faced with something like that, you live pretty quick, and good for him. That he's, he could have easily just, but he's like, I'm going to do it.
Yeah. On his own terms, man. It's pretty wild.
Yeah.
So you think you're not wanting to take credit. Do you think that helps you kind of stay anonymous and hidden so that people won't see you, won't make too big a deal?
Yeah. I don't want the spotlight. I had this conversation with my wife this morning when I reminded her that I was going to be on this. Like, I don't like talking about, I mentioned this earlier, I don't like talking about myself. So yeah, and that's, I 100%, feel that's just my nature, is I don't I like passing, I can't put it into words. I just don't like it.
It doesn't spark joy. That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
Well, here's a little food for thought. Like, for me, I've thought about legacy before. I think a lot of people do at some point or another in life. Like, what are you going to leave behind? And the thing I've really boiled it all down to is my legacy is going to be through people, and I've realized that you do that with little gentle nudges. one way or the other. You kind of do these tiny little nudges, and then over time, right? I heard somebody say one time that an astronaut, like a quote from them is like, if you're going to the moon and you miss the landing by an inch, no big deal. When you take off, if you're off by an inch on the takeoff, you're going to miss the moon by a million miles. So
Right.
the idea of somebody early in their journey, if you can nudge them in the right direction, right, you can entirely change that trajectory. And you are quietly nudging so many lives, because I have to assume that the impact on me that had, there has to be maybe not as great a magnitude, but something substantial probably in every one of these people you find. And you are like quite literally changing all of these people and everybody else that they touch. It's like, you ever think about that kind of stuff? That's wild.
Yeah, and I'm getting a little kind of emotional when you say that, because like I don't think of it at the time. I didn't think like when I first approached you, like I'm gonna completely transform Greg's life, or he's gonna go on to do these things because of this, or anybody else I talk to. Like I assume when someone says yes that they really want to. So now that you tell me. Yeah. And I'll be, so it's funny that you say yes, a lot, or, your first response is yes. I take no pretty easily too. Like when someone tells me no, I'm like, okay, like I don't push as much as maybe I should. Which might be interesting, because I'm sure there's been people that I've had to convince. I say that, but not really knowing if that's true or not, because I'm sure there's been somebody I really wanted to work with, and their first response is no, and I've had to find a way to convince them otherwise. Just I'm thinking about that now.
Maybe I should have played hard to get a little more.
I forget, what was I completely went off track.
No, just the idea of how many small changes you've made in all these people, and what a legacy you're leaving in them. Right?
Yeah.
And they may never attribute that to you, and you may never see the fruits of that, but it's out there.
Yeah, no, yeah. That might just be my nature. Like I was thinking, I was like playing this conversation in my head today. Like, okay, is Greg gonna ask me to like start from the beginning, like tell me, and I'll just give you my whole life story. But like when I went to college, I wanted to be a teacher. I thought that was my life calling. And I think about like teachers, and that's kind of what they do. They're there to lift up their students and make them, excel at something, or, learn something, so then they can take that to, when they become adults and whatnot. So, I think that's just in my nature, is I want to help people become successful in whatever adventure they choose.
Well, starting out, you wanted to be a teacher. Somewhere that changed into, I want to be like a writer, I'm a publisher, or journalist, or how did that come about?
That was a weird transition. I wanted to be a teacher. U of A, I just had general studies as my major. I didn't choose education. At the time, it was really competitive, and let's just say I wasn't the best student. I embraced the college lifestyle a little bit too much, and my schoolwork suffered. I actually dropped out of college, moved to Florida, and
as you do,
and was faced with the reality that I was delivering pizzas for Domino's, and I was like, man, this is my life. And so that was a shock to the system. So I ended up going back. I took a media arts class, and went back to community college to get through all my general study courses. And I took a media arts 101, and I really enjoyed it. And so I finally got back into the U of A, and I decided to go after my journalism degree. So I got my journalism degree. from the U of A, and I worked in newspapers for 3 years out of college. Um, First in a small town called Globe, Arizona, which is, if you know Arizona, and Globe is like this blue collar mining town, population 8,000. I was a fish out of water. It was just weird. But I worked for the local paper there for a year and a half, and then got an offer to work in a bigger Prescott, Arizona, and they had a more better opportunity for me, and worked there for a year. And then I mentioned earlier, I moved to Phoenix because the girl I was dating decided that she was done with Prescott. She wanted to, live in the big city. She got a job offer. I ended up just quitting and not having it. I didn't have any opportunities here, so I quit and I'll find something. And I found an ad for a book publisher. Coriolis was the name of the publisher. They were the small publishing group in Scottsdale. They were based in I like telling this story. They were based in a toilet showroom. It was like a like this little office in the back. They had these like toilets. That was my first job in publishing was as an admin assistant, and then I from there worked my way up into the book publishing world, and then joined Lynda and LinkedIn, similar fields. So it was kind of just random, but I found something that I really liked in this media arts class, like I never thought of, but it was a fun class, and then I guess the rest is history. But yeah.
You started doing journalism. Did I see for a little while you were like sitting in a courtroom and like putting out articles almost daily about kind of what happened or something like that?
Yeah, so so the first paper I worked for was a weekly newspaper, so you didn't have these daily deadlines. You had a week to write a story. And so when I moved to Prescott, they hired me as the cops and courts reporter. That was like my title. So every morning at 7 a.m., I would get up and I'd run over to the police station. In Prescott's, maybe 30,000. It's a small town. So they had, their police headquarters, and I would, as a reporter, they would give me access to all the police reports from the night before, and I'd scan through them. And if something looked interesting to me, I'd, write up a little something based on the police report, and then I'd go, get a quote from their public information officer, and then I'd run to the newspaper and write something up for that day, because our deadline was like 9 a.m. So I'd have a couple hours to write something up. And then the rest of the day was the courts portion side. Mondays were when they would arraign people. So anybody that was arrested would come in for their initial, how do you plead? And I'd sit through those, and anything interesting, which, small town, there wasn't a lot. And then if there was a trial going on, I'd sit through if there was one that I thought was like newsworthy, I use the air quotes there. I'd sit in and write stories. So, but yeah, so it's like, but that like daily deadline of like, you have 2 hours to do something. I think I've taken that to the extreme. Like I'm the biggest procrastinator. And maybe that's why journalism was was so good for me, because I put things off until the very last minute, everything. And I think I get a rush from that, from like those really extreme deadlines. So yeah.
The panic. Yeah. I think it was lynda.com when you first found me. I think that was the first time I ever really had deadlines like that. You guys call us authors. I've never thought of myself as an author, but having like a deadline to have all this material presented by, and I've never once missed a deadline. Like just the fear in me was so strong, and I was definitely a procrastinator too. And it taught me so much about really like scheduling myself and keeping myself accountable for things. So it was tremendous there. I'm assuming deadlines is something a lot of folks struggle with in your day to day.
Yeah. I mean, so my next career was in book publishing. I was an editor, and so in books, same thing. An author has certain milestones, and so part of my role as an editor in book publishing is making sure that the author is hitting their milestones. And that was, I hated it partly because because I was terrible with deadlines, like having to go to them and say like, excuse me, you owed me something last week. Where is it? Being the hard ass. I haven't learned anything from that though. Like I still wait till the last minute. I'm terrible with time management. And we have a desire to be better at it. Like I like the rush I get from, finishing something at the last minute. Yeah.
I have a guy I work with named Jimmy. He waits to the last minute to do everything. Guy is brilliant though. Like he is next level brilliant, and he will knock it out. And I was asking him, I was like, don't you worry? Like, doesn't that stress you out? And he's like, no, because I know I can get it done and I know how much time I need. And so I don't worry about it. It's like, God, man, that's baller. Like I used to delay everything, but I would also have the stress of like, I haven't done this.
Right. Well, what I find, like, I know how much time it's going to take me, and maybe I rush. So if I start early, I'll finish early. And then what I find myself doing is then just going back over that. And I'm like my worst critic. Like if it's something written, I'll go over it over and over. Oh, and I'll rewrite it 15 times when if I just waited until the 11th hour and wrote it, I'm like, okay, that's good. That's good enough. Yeah. And like, I hate reading my own writing. Like I don't really, reread emails before I send them. You probably, oh my God, how many typos does Jeff have in this email? And I'm like, what, they're going to get the point. But then I've gone back after the fact. I go, holy crap, did I just send that? Or someone, well, I don't know what you meant here. It's like, yeah, because I rushed this through. So
I really just love the hypocrisy of you, Jeff. So one of the things you have to do as like a LinkedIn learning author is you have to listen to yourself as you're recording nonstop. They won't let you do it any other way. And you can't even bear to reread your stuff. Hypocrisy, sir.
Yeah, I will share. I don't know if you know this, or like I had no desire to be on the other side of the camera. Like, but I had to do it once.
Did you?
Not for something that would show up on LinkedIn Learning. So you can't go on LinkedIn Learning and find something from Jeff.
Okay.
I did something more internal, but I had to use the same workflow. Like I had to write the script, and this was on. You were on camera, right?
Mm-hmm.
You bet. Yeah. Like so. I had to be in front of. I had to reach from the teleprompter. It was and then they would play it. Like the first take. Okay, I'm done. No, let's watch this. Like, oh, geez. So I know how difficult that is. Yeah. And I said, I'll never do that again. It was hard. It was really hard.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a crazy experience. Well, I know kind of what your professional life looks like just a little bit, and got a little bit of idea there, but I also know like I see you, I'll show up on Facebook in your tights, you cut a striking figure in Lycra, sir. So I see that you cycle a lot, you world travel a lot, and you do like this tattoo thing of all of these places you go. So tell me a little bit about that. I'm curious how all that got started. Like where's the desire to see the world come from?
That's a really good question. And, I know when you first approached me, you kind of mentioned, you'd like to talk a little bit about that. And I don't feel like I've been to some cool places, but, so what started this? One is we have some really good friends who they would make a commitment to go to a new country every year. And they've been together for 20 years. So they've been to 20 different countries, and they would always pressure my wife and I, you guys have to do more. My first trip outside of like the continental, North America, so Canada or Mexico, was to China over 20 years ago. And that was so, I mean, to think about like your first international trip being to like a communist country and, Asian country, this is pre-internet. I'm trying to like technology wasn't a big thing. So, and it was, I thought maybe that would be like, oh, this is, you'll open the floodgates and you want to do more traveling. I don't think we did an international travel again until 15 years later to Amsterdam. So like there was a big window of like my first international trip, which I had an amazing, like China was, back then it was just an amazing experience. But then, yeah, it took 15 years for me to feel comfortable enough to do it again. And then but my wife and I do try to do something a little bit, adventurous, at least once every couple of years, not every year. The pandemic, yeah, really put a wrinkle. Like I mentioned, it was 2 years before we took any kind of trip, and that was just to Mexico. Yeah, so I want to do more. Like, yeah, and we just got back from Portugal a couple of weeks ago, and we're like, what's next? So we do have the bug. It's finding the time and the money, and yeah, the tattoo thing though. So in Amsterdam, we were there over my birthday. My wife and I'd always wanted a tattoo, but I was like, I've seen people get tattoos and like seeing them cringe, and it looked painful. And she's like, I'll get you a tattoo for your birthday if you want. And I thought, what a better way to like commiserate,
Freudian slip there, yeah.
Yeah, celebrate this trip and something permanent. So I drew something up. So it's a little bicycle. So Amsterdam's a big cycling, like they're big into bikes. So I got this little penny farthing bicycle with an owl on it that I found a line drawing. I took it to some tattoo shop in Amsterdam and said, "Can you do this?" The guy didn't speak a lick of English, and so I was like, "Okay, if I go someplace that really has an impact on me, I'm gonna try to remember it by getting a tattoo." So I'm gonna get a tattoo. I've decided of a sardine can for my trip in Portugal. That was that's how I'm gonna remember that trip, is a sardine can someplace.
So what kind of impact do you think these places have had on you? I mean, if it's, you said a big thing, I want to commemorate it. So what did Amsterdam and Portugal do?
It just made me think about how different, like how I lived was compared to them. We tried to, like in Amsterdam, we stayed a week. Like when we told friends, especially our friends that travel a lot, we said we're going to Amsterdam for a week. They're like, that's a long time to be stuck at one place. But I wanted to kind of get a feel for like how people that live in Amsterdam. So we got an Airbnb outside of like the touristy areas, and we stayed with the couple that we were renting from lived right next door to us. So we got to pick their brain and like what do you do on a Wednesday night? So I really wanted to kind of immerse myself in like how somebody that is from Amsterdam lives. I mean, albeit we didn't work, so it was all play for the week we were there. But we went to like places that only locals would go to. We traveled by bike, like we never got in a car, and so like it just was eye-opening to me, like how they live. And again, I'm looking at this from a very different lens, but so that's what I really enjoyed, is like just to get a sense of like I'm in my little bubble here in Phoenix, Arizona, and I know how I and my friends, this is what we have to deal with, but I don't know what others do. So that's what I think really, that was the biggest kind of impact on me, was just to get a snapshot of how they live.
Mm. I think my experiences with that echoes yours a lot too. Like, to me, it feels really important to travel someplace where people are very different than you. It doesn't necessarily have to be a different country, right? Like if you're from rural Kentucky, I'm sure San Francisco feels like a completely different planet. You know what I mean? But yeah. I think it's important because we get so mired in our paths. Like I always imagine, like the rut, the daily rut that people walk, and because my dog's in the backyard, they cut these paths through the grass, right? And it does just where's this rut, and I just like imagine people that do the same thing for 20 years in a row. that rut has to be so deep you probably can't even see over the sides anymore. It's like you have no concept of what anything else is like, and it really, I think, to me, it feels so important to not only see other people, but get down in the dirt with them, feel how they live. And I had an opportunity to go to Australia and live with some of my friends' in-laws down there. And it was, people take you in, they feed you, you really start getting good at the fake Australian accent, and they love that stuff. No, but it kind of connects you to them in such a way that you never would before. And it was transformative for me. Every time I do something big like that, it truly does make me a better human, more empathetic, more understanding about things around me. And I think a lot of people here get, what's the word, myopic, where you see like this tiny little pinprick of things. And I think it's important. It's important. Not enough people do it, and they probably don't see the value, or maybe they're too afraid. I'm not sure.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I'm always kind of curious when I meet people that are, from other countries that are visiting the U.S. and like, why did like, this is my everyday life. Like I'm one, like when I was in Portugal, I'm like, this is their everyday life, and to me, this is like amazing. Like I get to do these amazing things, but to them, is it, like you said, is it just like their day to day? Is it just like normal activity? And so that they come to the U.S. and they get to go to a 7-Eleven, or they get to go to In-N-Out Burger. It's like, I don't have this in Portugal, where it's like, this is every day for us. Yeah, it is interesting. And the couple that I mentioned, like, when we do decide to, take a trip, we don't do a lot of planning. Like, we know basically what we want to do, but like the friends that travel a lot, she more than he is real meticulous, and like she has the spreadsheet, and every minute is planned. We have to do this, we have to do this, we have to do this, and like that would drive me nuts, because like I want to just kind of like, yeah, there's certain things that we have to get done, but I want to experience it, how if I was just there, if I lived there, let's go to this restaurant or something. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
But
I do the exact same thing. When we go on a trip, we have the highlights we want to hit, and everything, like how we actually get there, we never really know what that path. But to your point, like the mundane things were some of my favorite. So over there, I think going to their shops and like their malls and stuff was one of my favorite parts. I don't know, their grocery stores. It was just fun to go to their grocery store. And they came over here, and he brought his wife for the first time, and they stayed with us. And in the morning, my wife, made coffee and then had it set up. And she was marveling at, like, you guys have like cups with your coffee, and then like, here's the little creamer right here. It's like, yeah, dude, like every other American in their home. But it's like, we've seen this on TV. It's like, just the mundane day to day can be so special to people. And I know it was to me too. It's like,
yeah. Have you ever done a cruise?
We've done those a couple times. Yeah.
That's we've done those a couple times too, and it going back to like everything is planned out for you. Like, I'm not a cruise guy, because it's like, yes, you have to be on this itinerary, and I didn't like the fact that we weren't, we couldn't pick our own adventure.
Yeah, I get bored. Like, I start feeling walled in pretty quick, and I want to be off and like able to like do whatever I want. So
yeah, same.
That kind of holds me still in place. Well, so we've seen you start to finish. You're a cycling guy. You are a world traveler, collector of tattoos now. What's next? What's your next adventure?
That's a really good question. I would like to do more of that. My wife recently retired about 2 years ago, so she started her next adventure. She was a programmer, so she was so the grind, like 9 to 5, and she ended up getting laid off, and decided, well, I'm gonna use this as an opportunity to do something else, and so she became a yoga instructor. So that's how she's passing the time. So yeah, I'm still doing the day to day, which I enjoy. And but yeah, I think about like, where do I see myself in 5 to 10 years? Uh, that's a really good question. Not here though. Like, yes, I'll still have roots here in Phoenix, but I have this camper truck that my ultimate goal is to jump in that and just, talking about like, there's so much of the US I haven't explored.
Mm.
So I would love to take 5 or 6 months and just travel around and just explore places I've never been to, small towns, national parks, you name it. So that's kind of my dream,
Mm.
is to do that.
Are you going to strike up conversations with strangers while you're on your trip?
uh, it depends on how many adult beverages I have. My introvertness, I'm not sure if that's a word, but it diminishes the higher the alcohol content is. So my wife says I'm not an introvert. She's like, "You're not an introvert," because I don't feel comfortable doing it, but I'm like you. I don't, even though I've done it with you, I don't like making small talk. So I will put somebody on the spot right away. If I don't know them, the least I know them, the better, because then I don't have any kind of biases. Like they're a blank slate, so I can put them on the spot. Yeah.
I love it, man. It's fun. It's fun. All right, Jeff, we're coming up close to time, I think, and I want to be very respectful of that. Usually this is the part where I say, if you want people to interact with you on the internet, how would they go about that? I have a feeling you're going to say, please don't do that ever. No, I'm just kidding. Connect with you on LinkedIn, maybe something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I didn't get into I think I mentioned a little bit like what I'm doing now. LinkedIn is a great way to connect with me. If you want to touch base, jkellum at linkedin.com, or jkellum link. I don't know. You should look up Jeff Kellum on LinkedIn. You'll find me. I'm sure there's some kind of easy URL.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you, man. I appreciate your willingness to find your way outside of your comfort zone and be very open and honest, and couldn't ask anything else of you, man. So
this is fun. I do appreciate it.
Yeah, let me hit stop on all this stuff.